Hey, so I was talking to someone today. By the way, it's day 21 of 365. I was talking to someone today about just some crazy stuff that this person was going through. Just a lot of challenges and changes and a lot of growth and exciting things, but scary things, and yeah, transition. And at one point I said, wow, and we were sharing back and forth what's been going on in life, right? At one point I said, wow, it's like you're really on the hero's journey, and I'm sure your souls, because this person was talking about to someone else in this person's life, and I said it sounds like your souls really agreed to play those roles for each other and challenge each other in that way. And it's like you're on the journey, but it's the hard part. And the person said, after I said a few things about that, they said, wow, I don't really know, I'm not really familiar with the words you're using or how you're using them. The language is different, but it's really intriguing, and it somehow makes sense, but I don't really understand what that means. And then they said, I guess I'm asking, what are your spiritual beliefs around souls and that, because this person was intrigued. So I said, okay, this is what I believe. So that's kind of what I want to talk about in this video. And it's not really, in my opinion, it's not as much a spiritual belief like a religion, but it's more of a remembering of what it was that we came here to do. And so this is kind of how I started that explanation. When my brother died, I felt like he was visiting me, and it was new for me to be visited by someone who had passed. I had experienced some weird things when I was younger that I couldn't really explain, but by the time I was in my teens, that had stopped. So it was more when I was like, I think 10, 11, 12, that I would see or feel that maybe I was being visited. There were a couple incidents around that time that really stood out, and I still think about them today. But when my brother died, I really hadn't experienced anything like that before, because he died. And when I went to see his body and at the mortuary, they allowed us to see him before he was cremated. The woman who worked there, it was in California, a place in, I think it was in Orange, maybe Santa Ana, but the woman who worked there was really, really kind to my family, and she let us see him as much as we wanted before he was cremated. I think that's not normal for that place. They don't normally let you view, or maybe you had to pay or something like that, but she allowed us to see him. So the first time I saw his body, it was a really traumatic thing. I think I might have seen him a day or two after he died. He was hit by a truck, by the way, a fire truck. They didn't see him, and he was on his motorcycle. So he died apparently on impact, but we don't really know because, there's been some issues or complications with that. Anyways, so when I went to see his body, I remember looking at him and sobbing, but also having this sensation that he was on my right side talking to me, and I was actually speaking out loud, talking back to him. But at the time, I was so wrapped up in what was happening, seeing my little brother, in front of me, lifeless, but having a sense of his presence to the right. I was so caught up in what was happening that I didn't connect the fact that I was sensing him and connecting to him in that moment, even though his body was empty. His soul was to the right, it felt like. It took me about a month to realize that I was actually talking to him and he was there. Because it's like when you feel someone speaking to you and you're talking to them and they're in the flesh, you don't question it because they're in the flesh. But in this case, his body wasn't there. He was just, the presence of him was there. So that was interesting. I didn't explain all of this in my phone conversation. I'm explaining this to you now because I can go a little more in detail about this one topic. And the topic is really, our soul life, and what do I think of that, and how did these thoughts or ideas or memories, remembering of where we come from, come about. Another example of something odd that happened is I was in a lot of grief one night about something else. Honestly, it didn't have to do with my brother, but it was after he died. And I remember being in bed crying and thinking, just help me understand this. I was really hurting because someone in my life was basically upset with me to a point that they didn't want to talk to me anymore. And it was based off of a big misunderstanding where they thought I had done something against them. And in reality, I was completely trying to help, but my action was misunderstood. There was a lot of miscommunication where the person didn't come to me directly, but heard things from someone else. And it was a family member that made it really hard to accept. And I don't have drama like this in my family, so it was a new sort of feeling. And it wasn't like my immediate family, like my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister. It was someone else who I still really looked up to. And anyway, so they were really hurt and sad by something that they thought I had done to them, and my intention was completely the opposite, and it was all just misconstrued. But anyways, I was grieving just from that loss, of being connected to that person. And I was crying at night, and I asked, I didn't really have a certain person or belief at the time. I didn't know who I was asking, but I just said, can you please help me understand what to do? Like, what am I supposed to do about this? How am I supposed to feel? What is this all about? And in a flash, I saw this vision of a grid that was green, like a neon green grid. And so there were lateral lines and the opposite of lateral lines, or like horizontal lines and vertical lines. And they were green. And then my focus was zoomed into a very, it was zoomed in to one part of the grid, and I was shown a dot. And then the understanding came to my mind that that dot represents this moment, and it zooms out to show me this moment doesn't mean anything in the grid. It's going to be such a small dot in this big scheme of life, and what this life is like a grid. And there's all these different intersections of time and space and feeling and connection to others. And this is just one little tiny dot on the grid. And so what was interesting about that answer that came through was it came through immediately and very clear. And it wasn't my thought process that made it happen. It was this sudden, instant visual, and then with the visual, a mental understanding. So when you think about the clair the clair senses, that would have been an example of clairvoyance, the seeing of a visual that makes sense, and it comes in the form, the answer comes in the form of a visual. So clairvoyance, and then claircognizant, the just understanding mentally, right? So at the time, I didn't know what was happening, where the answer was coming from, and why it made so much sense immediately. Well, the next day, I was reading a book about the soul's journey, and this book is called Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. If you're interested in learning about souls, life between lives, and soul groups and guides. I highly recommend that book because it was kind of the first explanation, or it made sense to me. I'll say that first. It made a lot of sense because I was experiencing some weird things with Christian being gone, my brother Christian, but it was making sense as I read this book. It's like things were starting to fall into place. And so the next day I read this part in the book that I had never read before. I had never heard of it before, but I'm reading, just reading more about the book, getting, information about life between lives. And then there's this section, there was this one part, this sentence that said something about a grid. And you'd have to read the book to understand how it's laid out, but it's basically people who are in hypnosis who begin to speak on their life between lives. And the hypnotherapist, Michael Newton, recorded these sessions and then transcribed them. And that's the majority of his book, is the transcriptions, the dialogue between himself and the client who is in hypnosis and speaking about what they see as they recall their past life or their life between lives. And then he compiles all of the information from hundreds and hundreds of clients who speak about the same things when it comes to life between lives and soul groups and guides. And these clients don't know each other, they haven't had experiences like this before, but they begin to report some of the same things. There's common themes that come up. So that's pretty much the book. And then he also goes and explains things in between the dialogue. So there will be a lot of back and forth dialogue between, like I said, the hypnotherapist and the client, and then the author, who's also the hypnotherapist, will explain things in throughout the book. So it's an interesting way to learn about this stuff. But anyway, so as I read about the grid, I just was totally shocked. I put the book down and just thought, holy shit, I had goosebumps. I thought, this is exactly what I was shown last night. I had no previous knowledge of the grid, or had never seen it or heard of it before. And then the next day I'm just reading this book, nothing about the grid has been mentioned, and then it just gets slipped right in there. And so it just made me think, this is a world that I'm tapping into. This is a world that we are part of, that we're from. And it's no coincidence now that when people go into hypnosis and they go back to remember a life between lives, like they remember their soul life or they remember a past life, there's common themes and language that you begin to see patterns for, because we all come from the same place. So it makes sense. A lot of, the things we experience there are going to be the same. So that book really began to resonate with me and explain a lot of what was happening with more of the metaphysical world, and seeing Christian and getting information in new ways that I had never gotten before. Okay, so here's how I see it. There's been so much that has unfolded in the past couple years that ties all of this together for me, so it'll be really hard to just explain it in one YouTube video, and I won't try to do it in one video. But basically, there's this. We're all souls. We're all part of the universe. We're all part of spirit, source, God, divine energy, whatever you want to call it. We are all just a part of that. We're all that. We're all the same thing, pretty much. And we're different. We're expressions of that. So you have a soul, I have a soul, and our souls are an expression of God or source or universe. And we come to Earth. We get to have a body, and our soul gets partnered with this body for a short time while we're alive on Earth. And in that time, we're meant to learn lessons that make us more whole and help us remember our true selves, what our soul essence is really like. But part of the challenge of being on earth is when you come into this body and you have your experiences as a human, you forget your soul essence, you forget your soul life, you forget your real home, which is source or God or divine. And part of the work is to remember that divinity within, or to remember where we come from. And also part of the work here is to work on ourselves in a way that will help our souls grow or advance or be more whole. That's kind of the best way I can think of it. So we come into contact with other people who are going to help us on that journey. The journey is learning how to be our true self. So this is how I see soulmates. A soulmate is someone who, in the soul world, in the spirit world, we help each other. I'm just like trying to think of the best way to say this and remember, like, how did I say it in that conversation? Because it made a lot more sense. So when we're in our soul groups, we are with a group of souls we're always working on things to help ourselves advance and realize our light, realize our potential and our true self. And we have like classrooms that are in the spirit world of people, souls, who help us work on our issues, and we help them work on their issues in human form. So when we incarnate, it's like you're going to incarnate with this soul because together you guys work on each other's issues. This soul is going to be your husband, and this soul is going to play the wife, and he's going to bring up this stuff about her, and she's going to bring up this stuff about him. And if they work on it, it's going to complete them and advance them as souls. But sometimes the roles that we choose in the soul world, in the spirit world, can be really difficult roles. Like, it's not easy for a soul to play a partner who is going to betray the other partner. That's going to be a tough role. But in that lesson, the partner who was betrayed will learn how to be self-sufficient and strong and not rely on the other person for self-worth. And perhaps in that same dynamic, the person who betrayed, the soul who played the betraying role, will learn what it's like to lose something that they loved and to not take it for granted. So in the next life, when we incarnate into our next lives, so yes, I believe in multiple lives, that will have been worked through. And now in the next life, that soul gets to incarnate into a more advanced role, or have a more advanced experience of themselves, be more aware of their essence. So I believe this is kind of going even further, another step further, but if you follow the Enneagram and if you know about the Enneagram subtypes, the 27 subtypes, we have the same Enneagram subtype in all of our lives. And this person that I was talking to knows about the Enneagram subtypes, and that's how we met. So they understood this part very much. But I'm a self-preservation 4 on the Enneagram system. And so I've had, experiences where I do know my past lives, and I've seen, what I was working on or what was the issue there. As a soul, I will always be a self-preservation 4, but what I learn is different in each life because I'm advancing, I'm growing, I'm becoming more aware as the lives go on. So it's interesting for me to think about the soul groups that we have being a group of souls who will always complement us in terms of what we're working on and what they're working on. So a soulmate is someone who incarnates with you. They're a soul who tends to incarnate with you in many lives, playing a role that is close to you or very significant in your life. So it's like a classmate. It's like your best classmate. This soul matches me so much in terms of what I have to work on, what they have to work on. We've incarnated as brother and sister before. We've incarnated as husband and wife. One life, that soul was my wife. This life, I'm the wife. We've had lives where we were enemies. So to me, that's a soulmate. That is what a soulmate really is. It's a soul that you incarnate with regularly in many, many lives, because you complement each other on what you're going to bring to the other and how you're going to help them advance. And it doesn't always mean that the roles are easy and lovey-dovey, right? They can be hard, but the love between souls is so strong that they say to each other, I will play that role for you, even though it's going to be a tough role and we're going to have a tough time relating. I know that if I play this for you, I love you so much that it'll help you grow. And if you play that role for me, it'll help me grow. And we're going to partner up on this life and go to earth together. And we might forget that we had this agreement. We'll probably forget, and we might end up hating each other or separating. But I know that ultimately it'll help us as souls. And then in the soul life, everything is fine. There's no resentment, there's no animosity, there's a remembering of what you agreed on with that other soul. And that's why sometimes when you meet people, there's just this feeling like, I know this person before, or I feel like I've seen you somewhere, or I feel like I have to go to that person and say something. Or there's been times where people say, I knew when I saw her she would be my wife, but I didn't know why. I had never met her before. I'm not saying it has to be romantic, but there's familiarity that you have with people sometimes because you are in each other's soul group and you've played roles for each other before. So you could just be really familiar with their essence, and you don't consciously and logically understand it, but your soul recognizes it. Your soul knows, oh, okay, maybe this person, anyways, I was just going to go off on like a weird hypothetical, but my point is that you can have like you can have a memory that goes beyond logic, because your soul recognizes that person, that soul, has been with you in other lives, and there's some familiarity there. And maybe that was also part of the planning phase. So there's a planning phase when you incarnate into life of who's going to play what role. It's a very intricate plan. How many times have you thought, that's crazy, I met that person, it's like so weird that our paths crossed, it's like perfect timing, I can't believe I met her. If I had never met her, we would have never blah 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 blah. Like, like sometimes when you look at the people who have been in your life, they've played such significant roles, such prominent roles in your development and your growth, and you may not talk to all of them anymore, but the role they did play was significant. So all of that is designed before you incarnate into life. It's all part of the pre-life plan. And it's not to say there's not free will, because you can always choose to not talk to the person that you feel like something's drawing you to talk to them, or something's drawing you towards them, or something. There's always free will, but there is how I've learned and experienced it. There is a design, there is a divine plan that is meant for your growth. And so being tuned in to the signs, into your intuition, to your feelings, into that voice in your head that says, don't do that, or do that, or pay attention to that, or like you're you want to be open to the signs, like how when I was telling you I was crying that one night and asked for help, and the help I received was in the form of a visual and a direct knowing. You want to tap into that stuff, because we all have the clair senses. We all have the ability to know and see and feel and hear beyond our five senses, beyond the logical brain, beyond conscious thought. So that's how you can tap into what's in line with your soul's plan. And so going back to the whole start of this video, your hero's journey is your soul's journey. And if you're familiar with the hero's journey, it's an archetypal pattern and story that's used in any famous book, any famous movie. Any successful book or movie is successful largely because this story outline is being used. And it's an archetypal outline that represents a hero on a journey and how they go through trials and tribulations and then return to their true self, or their better self, their higher self. We as humans like and recognize that story because it is in line with the soul's journey. It's the very same one. So this is the hero's journey. If you want to know more about it, look up Joseph Campbell, and he is responsible for the Star Wars story. Lord of the Rings is a really good example. You can look up any comic book, movie. It's everywhere, really. The hero's journey is being used in every movie and book that's somewhat of a classic outline. So this is how it starts. You have the hero who is told that they are meant for great things. And so they get this message, or someone comes to them and says, you're the one, you were meant to play this role. And so they're being asked to answer the call. That's what that phase is about. Answering the call is like saying, yes, I will live up to what I was meant to be. I will answer the call and I'll do it. In the story outline of the hero's journey, the hero will always say no first. They'll say, you have the wrong guy, that can't be me, or they're in disbelief, or they doubt it. There's no way that I'm capable of those things. I can't do it. I can't be that one. You have the wrong person. And they decline to answer. They decline the call. Then usually some kind of guide or person or helper or sign or situation will tell them again, yes, it's you, you have to, or they'll feel like they have to do it. There's some reason why they now feel inclined to do it, or they'll say yes. So then the hero goes on the journey. They say yes to the call, and they begin the journey of stepping into this role and becoming that hero. And along the way, one of the first things is they will meet a guide, a mentor, someone who is there to show them their light, to show them their own light, to show them their own inner gold, to give them the confidence, the encouragement. And in the hero's journey, they also, along, in the start of their journey, they will meet friends and allies, friends, enemies, and allies. So you get an idea of these are the helpers, this is my group, this is my team, these people are on my side, and then you get an idea of the bad guys. This is the group that I'm against. The bad guys come and try to stop the progress of the hero on their journey. And then there's a significant point where the hero reaches a very low point in their journey. They have failed one sort of test or one challenge or one fight. They are told they believe that they can't do it, uh, and they'll question the whole journey. And that usually happens after the course of 3 challenges or fights or issues. So the first issue, the hero fails. The second issue or challenge, the hero fails, as in they don't, they're badly beaten. And then the third issue or challenge or fight, the hero succeeds. And then there's the returning home phase. The hero returns back to their starting point, but now they are a changed human being. They're a changed soul. They are more evolved. They're wiser. They have proven to themselves that they can do it. They're the ones. And so if you just kind of watch movies with that general outline, you definitely want to look at Joseph Campbell, by the way, because I'm sure I've missed some parts and didn't explain it perfectly, but that's the general idea, is that stories that are significant or stand out in our memories and that last for a long time follow that formula. And we love it as humans because that formula is the very same formula that we have as souls on our journey. So that's why I have a program called Solid Self-Image that I've done, for a long time with clients. It's really to help the client find the hero within. And it's a really neat thing because it bridges their spiritual hero with their everyday hero. But that's on my website. You can find it if you're interested. It's called Solid Self-Image. But my point of the whole discussion here is you're on a hero's journey, and that is your soul on a journey of growth. That's what this life is all about. We come here and we just play a role of a person who is their own hero. Like we're our heroes of our own lives. And our mission is to advance as souls and return home, return back to source, changed, better, more evolved, understanding ourselves at a deeper level, realizing ourselves, individuating. That means leaving the collective thought process, the cultural conditioning, leaving the conditioning from childhood, and realizing your true self and your true potential. And that is the point of life. The point of life is to take the call, to say yes to the call, to answer the call, to go on the journey, to listen to your guides, to listen to the wisdom within that says, gives you those feelings of, I think I need to follow this sign, I need to follow this lead. And being clear on what you say yes to, what you say no to, so that you can realize your true self, your true empowered individual self, and realize your gifts, your spiritual gifts, your gifts that you will manifest here on this planet, and then bring them to your community, bring them to your family, bring them into your everyday life. That's one way to think of it, as returning home. Return it. How do we return our best selves to the community to improve the world? But the other way to think of it is returning home means when we die, we're going to go back to our home. That's the soul life. That's the spiritual world. And we've completed one school year as a soul with this whole life on earth. So every time we incarnate into a human form and live another human life, it's kind of like we're just completing a school year. It's like, okay, I'm a senior now, and next year I'm going to college. And you just keep doing that for all the lives that you incarnate. It's just an advancement, and you continue to learn. You say yes to multiple heroes' journeys over the course of however long, forever, I guess. But as long as you are incarnating on as a soul on earth, you are taking up the hero's journey. And yeah, that's why it feels so familiar when we watch movies like Star Wars or Spider-Man or any kind of movie where she's asked to say yes and she says yes, and it's not easy. There's ups and downs, and then ultimately at the end there's triumph. That's a classic archetypal story that matches the soul's journey, and that's why we love it so much in, you know, entertainment and books, because it's speaking to a deep part of ourselves. Our collective unconscious knows that we come from this place and we live out this story all the time in all of our lives. So yeah, that's my belief, I guess you could say, but really it's more of a remembering and an understanding and a knowing of where we come from and what this is all about. And I find it honestly really helpful to remember that when things get tough, because you can kind of take this bigger perspective and remember there's a point to all of this. And how am I going to benefit from it? How is this helping me grow as a soul? It doesn't mean it's easy, but what's in this for me? What lesson is here for me? Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.